The Denali Wilderness, 6 million acres of untamed Alaska. A place where nature doesn't bend to human will, humans bend to it. Michael Townsend wasn't supposed to be there that long. An experienced wilderness guide from Seattle with over a decade of backcountry expertise, Mike had planned a simple afternoon hike, a chance to clear his head after months of guiding tourists through these same trails. Day 217 of my personal challenge, solo hiking in different conditions each week. Today's just a quick one in Denali. Should be back at the lodge before dinner. He recorded on his phone, smiling as his breath formed clouds in the frigid air. But Denali doesn't care about human schedules or human plans. What started as a solo afternoon hike turned into something else entirely when an unexpected storm front moved in, faster than any forecast had predicted. Within 30 minutes, the pristine blue sky had disappeared, replaced by dark clouds and swirling snow. Come on, not now," Mike muttered as his GPS device flickered and died, the extreme cold draining its battery despite being rated for winter conditions. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in under an hour. The wind erased his tracks behind him, and his GPS battery, rated for extreme cold, failed in the sudden brutal chill. "Just follow the ridgeline. Keep the mountain on your left. You know this area, Mike. You've done this 100 times, he reassured himself, voice steady despite growing concern. But he hadn't done this 100 times. Not in whiteout conditions, not alone, not without backup, not with a storm of this magnitude. He tried his satellite communicator next, the emergency backup device that wilderness guides carry for situations exactly like this. But even that technological safety net was compromised by the storm's interference. The sun disappeared early that December afternoon, and so did the trail behind him. Alone, freezing, no cell signal, no way to call for help, and something was moving between the trees. At first he thought it was his imagination, a trick of light and shadow in the fading day. The human mind conjures shapes from chaos, especially when stress levels rise. Perhaps it was just snow falling from branches, or wind moving the smaller trees. "Hello? Is someone there?" Mike called out, voice immediately swallowed by the howling wind. Instinct took over. The primal awareness that comes from thousands of years of human evolution, the certainty of being watched. He turned around, not once, but 3 times, and every time, those same glowing eyes were watching him, reflecting what little light remained in the stormy afternoon. Eyes that didn't blink in the driving snow, eyes that moved with purpose, tracking his movements with intelligent assessment. Wolves. The realization hit him with the force of physical impact, not a single wolf, which might be merely curious or passing through. At least 5 distinct pairs of eyes now visible through the trees and swirling snow. Maybe more hidden beyond his field of vision. A full pack. The apex predators of the northern forests. Holy! The word escaped Mike's lips as a half-formed prayer or curse. He stood absolutely still, processing this new and potentially lethal development. He wasn't being ignored. He was being tracked. This wasn't a chance encounter where the wolves would simply move on to other territory. They were actively following him, maintaining a consistent distance, neither approaching nor retreating. Day 217 update. He spoke with forced calm into his phone camera. "I've got company, Canis lupus gray wolves. They've been following me for about 10 minutes now, keeping their distance but definitely interested." He turned the camera to show the tree line, catching the reflection of eyes in the darkness. "They're magnificent," he continued, genuine awe in his voice despite the danger. "But I'm not going to lie. This is not ideal." What Mike didn't say out loud was what every wilderness guide knows. Wolf attacks on humans are extraordinarily rare, statistically improbable. But they do happen, especially in desperate conditions when normal prey is scarce. Especially when the wolves might be hungry after weeks of difficult hunting in deep snow. And winter in Denali is nothing if not desperate. Before we go deeper into what happened next to Mike Townsend in the Denali wilderness, Take a second to subscribe if you love real stories of wild survival and the unbelievable power of nature. We publish new documented encounters every week, meticulously researched and verified. Trust me, you'll want to be here for the next one. Every instinct told Mike to run. It's embedded in our evolutionary psychology. The flight response when confronted with predators, the sudden surge of adrenaline, the quickening heartbeat, the tunnel vision focused solely on escape. Running is what prey does, and what runs gets chased. This fundamental law of predator-prey dynamics has been consistent for millions of years across countless species. Don't run. Whatever you do, don't run. Remember your training, Mike whispered to himself, fighting against the powerful biological impulse to flee. He recalled his wilderness first responder training. His instructor's words echoed in his memory. Wolves are coursing predators. They're built for the chase. If you run, you trigger their hunting instinct. You become prey. Stand your ground. Make yourself look bigger. Back away slowly if you need to move. Hey, wolves, I see you there, he called out firmly, voice projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. But these weren't curious juveniles or a lone wolf that might be scared off by simple intimidation. This was a coordinated pack with the confidence of apex predators on their home turf. The wolves remained in position, unmoved by his display. So Mike fell back on his years of wilderness experience. He remembered something fundamental about survival in extreme situations. Adaptation is everything. Slow and steady. Don't challenge them. Don't run from them. Just exist, he murmured, adopting a new strategy. He kept walking, slowly, sideways, eyes forward but constantly aware of the pack's movements in his peripheral vision, each step deliberate, testing the snow for depth before committing his weight. Pretending he wasn't afraid, his face remained composed, breathing regulated, posture upright despite the howling wind and dangerous cold, even though his heartbeat echoed louder than the wind in his own ears. You know the lodge is northeast from here. Maybe 5 miles, he told himself, focusing on practical goals rather than the wolves. You can make 5 miles. Just keep moving. As darkness fell completely, Mike's chances of finding the lodge diminished with every passing minute. In sub-zero temperatures with a snowstorm intensifying, the equation was simple. Find shelter or die. Need to find something, a cave, an overhang, anything, Mike muttered, scanning the landscape for natural features that might provide temporary shelter. But Denali offered no mercy that night. No convenient cave appeared in the rocky outcroppings. No abandoned cabin materialized from the swirling snow. Nothing but wilderness and wolves and the increasingly desperate calculation of survival odds. Hours passed. The temperature continued to drop as night deepened. The storm showed no signs of abating. The wolves didn't attack. They didn't leave either. They kept a distance, watching, waiting. Mike checked his watch, almost midnight. The storm had begun around 2 p.m. He'd been hiking for almost 10 hours, the last 7 under extreme conditions with the wolf pack in constant attendance. It's been almost 7 hours, he recorded, voice noticeably hoarser now from the cold and exertion. I've covered maybe 3 miles. The wolves are still with me. I don't understand what they're waiting for. He turned the camera briefly to show the reflective eyes still visible beyond the reach of his headlamp. If they wanted to attack, they've had every opportunity, but they just follow, like they're escorting me or hurting me. The word triggered a new thought. Wait, are they hurting me? He whispered more to himself than the camera. Mike decided to test his theory with a simple experiment. Rather than continuing in the same general direction, he deliberately changed course, veering left into a section of denser forest. The reaction was immediate and unmistakable. The wolves became more active, their previously languid tracking transforming into purposeful movement. One wolf circled rapidly around to position itself on Mike's left side, effectively blocking the new direction. They are, Mike exclaimed, astonished. They're steering me. And then, something unexpected happened that changed his understanding entirely. What the? He breathed as his headlamp illuminated a sheer drop-off ahead, a ravine or small canyon that would have been completely invisible in the darkness until too late. The wolves had been preventing Mike from walking straight into a ravine, a 50-foot drop onto jagged rocks that would have meant certain death in these conditions. They're protecting me? The question formed on his lips with genuine disbelief. That can't be right. Whatever was happening defied conventional wisdom about wolf behavior. These weren't just random movements. There was purpose, intent. "I've guided in wolf country for 12 years, Mike recorded, voice filled with wonder. "I've seen them hunt. I've seen them play. I've never seen anything like this. It's like they're, I don't know, keeping me safe." Have you ever felt like something was protecting you, but you didn't know why? Tell me in the comments, what do you think was going through those wolves' minds as they guided Mike away from danger? Your theories might be as good as what the experts came up with later. By 2 a.m., the temperature had dropped below 20 degrees Celsius. Wind chill pushed it closer to 40 degrees, the point where Fahrenheit and Celsius meet, where exposed flesh freezes in minutes. Mike's movements had become increasingly labored. Despite his excellent physical condition, the combination of cold, deep snow and exhaustion was taking its inevitable toll. "Keep moving. Just keep," he mumbled, the words slurring slightly as he forced one foot in front of the other. Hypothermia had set in. The body's core temperature drops. Thinking becomes confused. Movements uncoordinated. The cruel irony of extreme cold. As death approaches, a final sensation of warmth often spreads through the body. "It's not so bad now. Getting warmer," Mike murmured, a slight smile appearing on his frost-covered face. It's the body's final surrender, the mind's last comfort before the end. His knees gave in without warning. He hit the snow face first, the impact cushioned by the deep powder. He didn't feel pain, nerve endings dulled by cold and the body's release of endorphins in response to extreme stress. Eyes barely open, frost accumulating on his eyelashes with each labored exhale. He thought it was over. Then, soft breathing. Not his. A different rhythm, deeper and more regular than his own shallow gasps. The alpha approached first. In wolf society, the alpha makes the decisions that determine the pack's survival. The large wolf approached Mike's collapsed form cautiously, studying the human with intelligent assessment. What happened next defies explanation by any conventional understanding of wolf behavior. One by one, the wolves approached, not with teeth bared or hunger in their eyes as might be expected with a predator encountering vulnerable prey, but with something else entirely. Something that, if observed in other wolves, might be described as concern. The pack formed a circle around Mike, not attacking, but shielding, creating a living barrier between his vulnerable body and the deadly cold of the Alaskan night. One rested its back against his, another curled against his chest. A third positioned itself near his legs. The remaining wolves arranged themselves in a loose outer circle, some lying down, others remaining standing as sentinels. Their body heat, wolves maintain a temperature of about 101 degrees, created a microclimate around Mike's failing body, prevented the progression of frostbite that had begun in his extremities, slowed the dangerous drop in core temperature that would have otherwise continued until his heart simply stopped beating. He couldn't move. Consciousness came and went in fragmented moments, but he wasn't alone anymore. Through the darkest hours of the night, as temperatures reached their lowest point, the wolves maintained their vigil. They shifted positions occasionally, ensuring that no individual wolf bore the brunt of the cold for too long, but the protective circle remained intact. Twice during the night, Mike regained consciousness briefly. The first time, confused and disoriented. He couldn't process what was happening. "Am I dreaming this?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. The wolf nearest his face, the alpha, turned its head at the sound, eyes meeting Mike's for a long moment before returning to its vigilant observation of the surroundings. He was not dreaming. What was happening was real. and completely unprecedented in documented wolf-human interactions. As dawn approached, Mike's core temperature had stabilized. Not normal, but no longer falling toward fatal levels. The wolves had accomplished something no wilderness survival expert would have thought possible. They had kept him alive through the night. If this moment gave you chills, the kind that come from witnessing something extraordinary in our natural world, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps us bring more powerful stories like this one to light, stories that challenge what we think we know about the creatures we share this planet with. Dawn in Denali National Park after a winter storm brings an otherworldly beauty. The first light creeps over the eastern mountains, illuminating a landscape transformed by the night's snowfall. But beauty in Alaska can kill as efficiently as any predator. When Mike failed to return to the lodge the previous evening, the staff followed protocol. They waited until morning before calling in search and rescue. This wasn't callousness, it was practicality. Night searches in Alaskan winter conditions put rescuers at risk without significantly improving odds for the missing person. By first light, a helicopter was being prepared as the storm cleared enough to permit flying. Two experienced park rangers, Wilson and Martinez, both with extensive backcountry experience, prepared their gear for what they expected might be a body recovery rather than a rescue. "Weather grounded us all night," Ranger Wilson commented grimly as they loaded supplies. "If he's out there without shelter..." "I know," Ranger Martinez replied. "Let's just focus on the search pattern." Nearly 40 minutes into the search, Ranger Wilson suddenly tensed, pressing the binoculars more firmly against his face. "Wait! 3 o'clock near that ridgeline," he called out, pointing toward a distant section of forest near the edge of a small canyon. Martinez quickly trained her own binoculars on the area. What she saw made her breath catch, dark shapes arranged in an unusual circular pattern against the snow. Are those wolves?" she asked, though the question was largely rhetorical. The two rangers exchanged a grim look. Finding wolves in the vicinity of a missing hiker rarely ended well. "Base, this is Rescue 1, Wilson spoke into his radio. "We have possible wolf activity at coordinates 63.4, 151.2. Investigating now. Might be too late." What the rangers expected to find was tragically common in these situations. Evidence that wildlife had found the body first. What they found instead would become the subject of scientific debate for years to come. The rangers approached cautiously on foot after landing, rifles ready but not raised. Hey, get out of here!" Ranger Martinez called out as they drew closer. The wolves raised their heads almost in unison, alert but showing none of the expected responses. No scrambling to flee, no aggressive posturing. The next morning, park rangers found him, curled in a circle of wolves, alive. The realization hit both rangers simultaneously as they drew close enough to see clearly. The form at the center of the wolf circle wasn't scattered remains. It was a complete human body, frost-covered but intact, and most shockingly, it moved. "He's alive!" Wilson exclaimed. "Martinez, he's moving!" The revelation transformed their approach instantly. What had been a grim recovery mission suddenly became an urgent medical emergency with a living patient. Barely conscious, hypothermic, but unmistakably alive. Against all odds, after a night of exposure in conditions that should have been fatal, Mike Townsend had survived. As the rangers approached closer, the wolves began to stand up one by one, looking at the rangers but not running yet. There was no aggression in their posture. No raised hackles, no bared teeth, no warning growls. The alpha wolf, distinguishable by its larger size, was the last to move. It looked down at Mike's form for a long moment, then up at the approaching rangers, making direct eye contact in a way that wolves typically avoid with humans. The wolves scattered, no violence, no resistance, just gone. They didn't flee in panic as wild wolves typically would. Instead, they loped away with purpose, occasionally looking back, until they disappeared among the trees, as if they had a mission, and it was complete. The rangers reached Mike, immediately checking vital signs and assessing his condition. His pulse was weak but present, his breathing shallow but regular. "Sir, can you hear me?" Martinez asked as she quickly wrapped him in emergency blankets. "We're park rangers. We're going to get you out of here." Mike's eyes fluttered open briefly at the sound of human voices. "The wolves," he managed to whisper, the words barely audible. "Don't hurt." "The wolves." Confusion crossed Ranger Wilson's face. "Sir, the wolves are gone. You're safe now." But Mike's concern hadn't been for his own safety from the wolves. It had been for the wolves' safety from humans who might misinterpret their presence. "Base, this is Rescue 1, Martinez reported into her radio. "We've found Townsend. He's alive. I repeat, he's alive, suffering from exposure and hypothermia, but stable." She paused, looking at the circle of compressed snow where the wolves had clearly spent the night arranged around Mike's body. "And Base, you're not going to believe this, but it looks like a wolf pack was keeping him warm." Static crackled from the radio before the response came through. "Rescue 1, please repeat. Did you say a wolf pack?" "Affirmative, Base. Get the medical team ready. And maybe call a wildlife biologist. We've got something unprecedented here." 3 days later, Mike had stabilized enough for the doctors to express cautious optimism about his recovery. "Remarkably little frostbite considering the exposure time and conditions," the attending physician commented during morning rounds. "Your extremities should make a full recovery, Mr. Townsend. I've treated hikers with far less exposure who lost fingers and toes. Whatever happened out there, you're extremely fortunate." "Thank you, doctor," Mike replied, his voice stronger now but still carrying the exhaustion of his ordeal. As the doctor exited, another visitor remained, Dr. Emily Reeves, a wildlife biologist specializing in wolf behavior from the Alaskan Wildlife Conservation Center. "Mr. Townsend, I'm Dr. Emily Reeves from the Alaskan Wildlife Conservation Center," she introduced herself. "If you're feeling up to it, I'd like to ask you a few more questions about your encounter." Mike studied her with caution. He'd already been interviewed multiple times, each interview containing an undercurrent of skepticism that he'd detected despite professional courtesy. "You still don't believe me, do you?" he asked directly. Dr. Reeves considered her response carefully. "It's not about belief," she replied, her tone measured. "Your rescue is documented fact. The ranger's testimony is clear. What we're trying to understand is the why." In the days and weeks that followed, as Mike's story spread through scientific circles and eventually to the media, Dr. Reeves would become one of the primary scientific voices attempting to explain what had happened. "What happened to Michael Townsend goes against everything we know about these animals," she explained in one interview. "Wolves typically avoid humans at all costs. This kind of protective behavior is only seen with pack members, or occasionally with other animals they've bonded with from birth. What these wolves did for Mike defies our current understanding of wolf behavior," Dr. Reeves continued. "There's simply no scientific precedent for it." Other experts offered their own theories as the case gained attention. Professor James Norton, a behavioral ecologist from the University of Washington, proposed one of the more widely accepted hypotheses. Some researchers theorized that Townsend's calm demeanor may have triggered an unusual protective response rather than predatory instincts, he suggested. Wolves are incredibly intelligent animals with complex decision-making abilities. By not running, not challenging them, Townsend placed himself outside their typical predator-prey categorization, Professor Norton elaborated. He became something else to them. Not prey, not threat, but perhaps something their sophisticated social brains recognized as needing assistance. Indigenous perspectives added another dimension to the scientific discussion. Dr. Sarah Whitehall, herself of Athabascan descent, brought historical context to what many were treating as an unprecedented event. Many indigenous cultures across the Northern Hemisphere have stories of wolves helping humans in need, she explained. These accounts were often dismissed as mere folklore by Western science, but cases like Townsend's force us to reconsider these traditional knowledge systems. Dr. Reeves continued exploring alternative explanations that might satisfy more skeptical members of the scientific community. Others suggest that this particular pack may have had previous positive interactions with humans, she noted. Perhaps they were part of a research study or had been fed by humans against park regulations. Despite these attempts at scientific explanation, Dr. Reeves ultimately acknowledged the limitations of current understanding. But the truth is, science still doesn't have all the answers, she concluded. What happened that night in Denali challenges our understanding of interspecies relationships and animal cognition. Mike himself, once recovered enough to return home to Seattle, maintained a clear perspective on his experience that didn't waver despite the skepticism he sometimes encountered. The experts can debate all they want, he stated. I was there. I felt it. There was intelligence in those eyes, purpose. They made a choice. Do you think they recognized you were in trouble? The interviewer asked. Without question, Mike replied. They knew I was dying, and they chose to help. How does science explain that? How do you measure compassion in a wild animal? Where are you watching this from? I'd love to know where our community of wild-hearted souls is growing. From the frozen north to tropical beaches, the love of nature's mysteries unites us all. Drop your city or country in the comments. After his release from the hospital, Mike returned to Seattle. His physical recovery was complete within weeks, remarkably rapid given the severity of his exposure. But some experiences change more than the body. In the hospital, he said he never felt alone during his night with the wolves, that there was something ancient in their eyes. Not wild, not tame, just present, as if they knew. People keep asking if I was afraid of the wolves, Mike explained during a follow-up interview months after his rescue. Of course I was, at first. That's natural. But at some point during that night, something shifted. There was this moment when the big one, the alpha, looked right at me. And I swear there was communication there. Not words, nothing like that. But a kind of recognition. They weren't hunting me. They were keeping me alive, Mike stated with quiet certainty. I can't explain why. I don't think anyone can, really. But that's what happened. I've tried to explain it to people. The scientists, my friends, other guides. Nobody really gets it unless they've had that kind of encounter. Mike had preserved the journal he'd kept throughout his wilderness challenge. Day 218. He read from the entry written after his rescue. I am alive because a pack of wolves decided I should be. Science will say it was coincidence or some evolutionary anomaly. But I was there. I felt their breath, their warmth, their decision. I've spent my whole career teaching people how to survive in the wilderness, he observed, teaching them skills, techniques, how to use equipment. But now I find myself rethinking what wilderness really means, what separates us from the other creatures we share it with. Despite his ordeal, or perhaps because of it, Mike returned to his profession as a wilderness guide after completing his recovery. Mike Townsend still works as a wilderness guide, but his approach has changed. Where once he focused primarily on technical skills and human mastery over challenging environments, he now emphasizes relationship and respect. We're visitors here, he explained to a small group of hikers during a winter excursion, pointing out wolf tracks in the snow. This is their home. We don't fully understand their society, their decisions, their capabilities. The best thing we can do is approach with respect. But they're just animals, right? A skeptical tourist asked. Acting on instinct? Mike smiled at the question, not dismissively, but with patient understanding. That's what we tell ourselves to feel superior, he replied. But after what I experienced, I'm not so sure anymore. In the years following his rescue, Mike returned to Denali National Park multiple times, often in winter, hoping to encounter that same pack again. I never have found them again, he acknowledged. Maybe that's for the best. Some experiences aren't meant to be repeated. But I know they're out there, and sometimes when I'm hiking alone, I still feel like I'm being watched over. The story of Mike Townsend and the wolves of Denali challenges our understanding of the natural world and our place within it. It suggests boundaries more permeable than we typically acknowledge. relationships more complex than our scientific frameworks easily accommodate. It reminds us that even in an age of technological marvels and scientific certainty, there are still mysteries in the wild places of our world. Moments of connection that defy easy explanation. Perhaps some boundaries aren't as firm as we believe. Perhaps on the coldest nights, in the most desperate moments, the line between species can blur, if only for a few crucial hours. Perhaps in those moments, something more fundamental than species identity takes precedence, some recognition of shared vulnerability that transcends the categories we've constructed to separate ourselves from the rest of the living world. If this story moved you, don't let it be the last. Subscribe now and be part of a tribe that believes in the impossible, a community that sees the natural world not just as something to conquer or explain, but as something to connect with and learn from. And don't miss what's coming next, the story of a deep-sea diver's encounter with something in the ocean depths that marine biologists are still struggling to classify. It might just be even more unbelievable than what you've heard today. Tap the next video on your screen and let the wild take you there, to the places where mystery still thrives, where the unexpected still happens, and where nature reminds us that we don't yet know all her secrets.